All right, everyone, it's time for a reaction to the first part of the second round of Democratic debates. These are being held in Detroit. The big hitters there, of course, tonight, last night, obviously, were Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Pete Buttigieg. Biden and Harris will be at the second one. It's going to be infinitely entertaining to watch that one. With Biden present, it's going to tend to be more attacks from the bottom, and apparently without the benefit of having watched live, because of course of the time difference here in Western Europe, looking at some of the highlights, looking at some of the write-ups about it, both from the legacy media and from some of the commentators I subscribe to. There's a fairly clear picture of the general consensus, and this is why you can analyze a debate or a political event without actually physically witnessing it, because you can read other people's snap reactions to it, and you can get the perception, which is more important than the reality anyway. I'm sure that if I watched the debate live, I would have different reactions to different things than the average person, because I'm sort of trained in political analysis at this point, and I'm not simply sort of passively going through it. And the first takeaway is that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren largely held off attacking each other. There's a really good strategic reason for them to do this, and that's necessarily because neither of them is capable of tackling Biden. If they get into attacking each other, what can end up happening is they both get seen as more negative and they both lose their chance. The problem is that there is literally nobody else in the field able to thwart Joe Biden. Beto O'Rourke, he had a debate performance similar to the first, a little bit more energetic, I suppose. It seems like he embraced openly now reparations, open borders. Elizabeth Warren has now openly endorsed the idea of decriminalizing border crossings and giving free health insurance to illegals. That's a problematic message, and I think prevents her from possibly becoming the nominee. I can't imagine that she can find 30% of the Democratic Party to support actively such a move. That wouldn't be people that are possibly tied up with some of these other fringe candidates. And that is a fringe view. It is definitely a fringe. We need to start, understanding one fundamental thing here. It is a fringe view. It is fanatical and odd and crazy to suggest that you should open the borders of your country and not only maintain the welfare apparatus that's here, but expand it and explicitly apply it to people who aren't in the country legally. Because what this does is it incentivizes even more people to come. You would end up with hundreds of millions more people coming into the United States illegally. This is very funny because Elizabeth Warren has said literally nothing about streamlining or making cheaper or making quicker or easier the legal immigration process. I have heard not one Democrat mention the visa lottery system. I've not heard one Democrat talk about the throttling of legal immigration visas for various categories like work and migrant work and stuff like that. Not one of them has said a thing. They literally don't care about immigrants. The only groups that they care about are groups that they can exploit for political gain. In Elizabeth Warren's case, though, it'll be interesting to see whether she's gone so far to the left on this particular issue that it becomes impossible for her to actually maneuver. Let's say she gets nominated. How does she move back to the center during a general election? Donald Trump will be running against someone who is a socialist at that point. In fact, is further left than Bernie Sanders or arguably anyone else in the field on the immigration issue if Warren is nominated. And she arguably did better than Sanders and carried the night, and she's arguably in second place already. If she becomes the nominee, it'll be Trump 2020. I can tell you that almost certainly. Bernie Sanders did his normal shtick. It's interesting because some people's reactions seem to boil down to the fact that Bernie Sanders is getting boring because he's doing the same thing consistently that he did in 2016. This is both a strength and a weakness for Sanders. He has been consistent since the mid-70s on his views. He hasn't really changed them. His haranguing sort of hippie-trippy style of campaigning a la the earlier mid-70s strikes a chord, I think, with younger individuals, but at the same time, a lot of them he alienated last time around because he ended up endorsing Hillary Clinton. That wasn't a good look for him because he was casting himself off as, I'm not really a Democrat, I'm a maverick, I'm a socialist, the Democratic Party is irredeemably centrist and stuff, and then all of a sudden he endorses Hillary Clinton. Well, we've got to stop Orange Man because he's bad. I don't think that that was good for him long term. I think that he's preventing himself. I think that 2016 prevents Bernie 2020. in my own personal opinion. We go down the list again. Beto, boring. Most of the people there don't matter. Williamson got a few jabs in. Having hippie mother at the debate definitely is always a good thing. It'll be interesting to see if any of these people drop out. If I were Beto's family, I'd be begging him to do so. Delaney gets in a few shots, but ultimately he's not going to be the nominee. None of these lower tier individuals, if you're below Buttigieg, you're no longer viable. It's not going to happen. Buttigieg gets to stay in, although again, he's saying, well, yeah, we need reparations. Essentially, the Democratic platform boils down to taking money from various groups of people to give to other groups of people. We want to give reparations to people because 150 years ago, somebody in their family was enslaved. We want to give money to people who have broken laws to even enter this country, and there's no argument about it. You're a bad person if you disagree. We want to take more money from people to grant this so-called free health care for everyone. They can't even decide what's going to be in it. Bernie Sanders now is talking about a dental component and all of this other stuff that's going to be magically wrapped up in it. I don't even think that was initially part of his Medicare for All plan. So he's talking about even more costs. So the Democrats, it boils down to, we will raise taxes on the middle class. Like there was a status on Twitter. I probably should have kept it open. Can't remember. It was some liberal commentator there. And he's like, why are all of these questions being framed from a Republican point of view? Like CNN's are Republicans now. Really, really funny. Like the Trump fans and shit like that. Like, why are you for open borders? Why are you going to raise taxes on the middle class? Well, it's because they are. There are Democrats up on the stage that have proclaimed that if they are elected, they will do everything in their power to open the borders. In the most literal sense, there's no reason to have any border fortification beyond a vehicle barrier for terrorist attacks if you intend to allow people to cross unilaterally, give them things for free, and say, we don't care if you're in this country. We don't care. Essentially what they're trying to do is say, hey, well, we can at least process everyone. We'll know who's in the country because no one will fear getting registered or anything like that because we're not going to deport them. Where they're going to get free health care, they're going to get free education, they're going to get free job placement. Meanwhile, citizens and lawful immigrants, people who followed the rules and came in legally, will all have to shell out huge amounts of money to subsidize such a program. Yeah, really fair, really wonderful, Elizabeth Warren, that is, of course. Really fun programs. It's a terrible idea. I mean, they can't even tell you how they're going to pay for this. Bernie Sanders mentions, well, the top marginal tax rate will go up to, what was it, 50% or 60% or something. And the business tax rate will go up a little bit. The problem is this. People at the tippy top, the AOC enemies, they will use tax havens, they will use offshoring, they will use all sorts of, any loophole that they can exploit. Their businesses won't pay that extra 5%. They won't pay anything. Their personal income of these individuals, they're not going to pay that top rate. They'll shelter their income. They'll figure out ways around it. So who's going to actually end up paying? It's the middle class, like always, because they don't have the money to hire the lawyers and accountants necessary to use tax shelters and loopholes and things like that. And small businesses will pay that upper tax. Or what you will end up with is that the extremely rich and multinational billion-dollar corporations will do very, very well under such a scheme, because they will no longer have any smaller competitors. The private marketplace will be virtually wiped off the face of the earth because of the structure of the high tax spend models, the socialism that we're looking at with people like Sanders and Warren. It's impossible. As far as who wins the debate, as far as I can tell, it's basically a tale of, if you're a Warren fan, you feel happy. If you're a Sanders fan, you feel happy. Buttigieg, again, squeaks by and does well enough to stay in. Everyone else is not viable anyway, so they're non-issues. It doesn't matter that Klobuchar points out that there's a difference between winning an argument and winning an election. Yeah, it's very, very high-minded, prosaic terminology there from Klobuchar, but it doesn't matter. She can't become the nominee. She's stalled out at 0.5% in support. These people are literally non-issues. I mean, the entire bottom half of the field at this point should drop out and compact the upper half of the field to allow people who may be just outside, like a Cory Booker, to potentially compete. At this point, if you're supporting Gillibrand or Klobuchar or something, chances are you just don't like anybody at the top. In an electability election, you probably fucking hate Biden. You hate Sanders and Warren and can't support them. Maybe they'd rally around a Beto campaign. Maybe they'd rally around Cory Booker. You could probably extend it to 6 or 7 viable slots prior to the next stage of debates if you compact the field. The problem is that going to happen? If I'm Delaney, if I'm Gillibrand, if I'm Klobuchar, one of these lower rung individuals, if I'm Yang or Cory Booker, I'm just sort of sticking it in now to sell books, to sell campaign merchandise, to set the groundwork for a Senate run or a gubernatorial run or something like this. I'm not going to drop out. The fuck would I drop out for if I get 0.5% of support? It's still, what, 1 million people? Or some crazy amount like that. I can get people to sign up for my email newsletter. I can roll that over into a House of Representatives run or something like that. Or maybe I decide, I do like that one dude who ran for president, came in like 4th place years ago and became like the face of that Gold Line thing on Fox News, and he probably made more money at that than he could in politics. Maybe I get investors, I start a business chain. Oh, it's Kirsten Gillibrand's soda fountain or something like that. Why not? These people get millions of dollars every day sometimes, so there's no reason to stop doing it. So yeah, the big winner again though is Donald Trump. You have a top-tier candidate disqualified herself, Elizabeth Warren, fundamentally, from ever becoming president. That's a win for Donald Trump because there's a chance she actually becomes the nominee. Bernie Sanders, to his credit, he's stopped shy of that. He wants to throw free money at everything, but he hasn't said that he wants to throw the borders open. And that is what Elizabeth Warren means. And explicitly what she's saying is what Democrats for the last couple of decades swore up and down would never happen, which is that the Democrats would never seriously consider opening the border. No. We're just talking about granting kind of residency or something to people who have come here illegally, but they've done nothing else wrong and there are extenuating circumstances. Like a DACA thing. That's what they said they wanted. Now they're saying that they're for open borders and free stuff for those people that can get that amnesty. Not only do they want to let them in, they want to let everybody else potentially in who wants to come and give them free health care and education and job placement and training and everything else under the sun. How are we going to pay for these things? Even if you think that it's morally acceptable, even if you think it's a feel-good thing, it's good for the U.S., it's good for the world, it's good for mankind and Jesus and stuff. Okay, think that all you want. How do you pay for it? Because money does matter. In the pragmatic day-to-day business world, money pays for things. Where's the money going to come from? The rich don't even have enough to pay for such a scheme. There's not even enough money in the coffers of the billionaire class and their multinational corporations, even if you close the loopholes, probably. So I have to pay for it. That doesn't make me likely to vote for Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or something like that. That's about all. Peace out.